Why are men leaving the church? We're talking about that today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend, co-host, and fellow man, AJ Matthew.
My favorite title of all. I'm just a man.
Here's something interesting that you may or may not know, AJ, and if you're listening to this podcast, you maybe don't know, but some of our most popular episodes we've only done that I could go back and find, I think just 2 other podcast episodes in our 5 years. We're like either right at 5 years of the podcast or
next week.
Next week. It's really close. 2 episodes on men's ministry, maybe 2 or 3 men's ministry or men in the church specifically. We did an episode similar to this episode a little over a year ago. But this is one of our most popular topics, both on the YouTube channel and in the episode downloads and on our website. I think that if you're listening to this and you clicked on this episode, you might be feeling this. You might be looking around your church on a Sunday morning, looking in the pews and seeing, maybe a lot of gray-haired men who are committed to the church. But beyond that, you're not seeing a lot of engagement from young men or middle-aged men. And today we're going to talk about that. What is going on? So we've titled this "The Silent Exodus: Understanding Why Men Are Leaving the Church." We're going to try to give a few. The focus of today's episode is trying to understand the scope of the problem and maybe some of the factors behind it. We're going to give some key statistics that you may not know that might help to illuminate what's going on here. But beyond that, we want to try to give a few solutions or some hints towards a solution. I think it's a complex problem and there are no silver bullets. There's no, and here's this duct tape fix to this problem, because a lot of it is societal. It's bigger than just your church. But we can start chipping away at this and we can start outperforming what's happening in the society. So this is the topic that we know you guys care about because the numbers tell us so. And so we're glad to be talking about this again today. And it's something that I guess on the one hand, we're trying to talk about it as objectively as possible. And on another hand, I think you and I have some feelings about it because we are men. I think we have just some emotional connection to it. And for what it's worth, and if you've listened to this podcast for a long time, we are 2 very different kinds of men in the sense that I'm a little more outgoing and gregarious than not that you're like a wallflower or something, AJ, but like I don't think this is temperamentally tied. I think there's some of these challenges are rooted in manhood, despite what temperament that you have.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have some crossover in our temperament, but we've got some other
differences too.
Yeah.
Like you're handy, for example, and I'm not.
I'm handy. I can fix something.
I think in those ways you're more classically manly than I am, because if something breaks in my house, I'm like, we're gonna call somebody, I guess.
We've got like a half generation age difference. We're 14 years apart.
Oh yeah, maybe the fact that I feel like I have to call somebody is less a byproduct of temperament and more a byproduct of societal decline.
Could be. But yeah, a little nature nurture thing going.
Could be. Let's not try to psychoanalyze that today. So
you're a little more chatty about your feelings too. You're a little more expressive.
Totally.
So yeah. I'm a little more stoic. You're a little more open.
Yeah. Well, all that is actually going to play into what we're talking about.
It does play in. Well. So yeah, our first point here is that there have been cultural shifts and changing expectations about what men's role in society should really look like. I'm not sure I don't think men started championing, we want to be different. I don't think that was an intentional thing that men started driving. Um, I almost think so we can go way back with this because I've had this opinion for a while.
Okay.
I don't think it's something new or off the wall, but I think a lot of our shift began in World War II. I mean, it was an all hands on deck engagement by men, able-bodied men, spanning numerous decades of age, went to war. And I think it was just a cultural shift in our society. And I think the post-war period, because that men going off to war required something new and different of women. And that was to take care of the home front. I mean, that was forced upon us. But
And building, they went to work
yeah,
building
right.
the submarines and the ships and the airplanes
The
and
war machine
Rosie
had to
Riveter
have
and
something feeding
yeah,
it. That's right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with any of that.
If the men are
Um,
fighting, they
yeah,
can't build
that's
the
right.
machines.
Yeah. So, I mean, I said nothing wrong with any of that. Yeah. War is not good, but that wasn't, the whole country didn't wake up one day and go like, let's completely flip upside down how we behave and relate to one another and how our entire society works. That happened to us, in the 1940s. But it didn't just snap back to the way things were in, 19, when the war ended, 45, 47, 45.
45.
It wasn't just like bing, and now everything is exactly the way it was. It just never was the same again. And but I think it was the beginning of a change. A tide had started to come in that began to change, and that was the way men and women related to one another, the way men and women, their positions in the workplace, their positions in the home, their positions in the church. And fast forward now 70 years. This didn't happen overnight. This happened over a long period of time. um, but I think this is where we are now, where there was a men's leadership role in society and in family culture and in church began to come down. Women came up, and to this point of equality, quote unquote, that has been championed strongly for the last, well, 50 years, 30 years, 20 years. And I think this is where we are now, where men are like, okay, I don't need to be up here in this leadership role that I used to have to be, want to be, and was wanted to be.
I think you're right. And I think if you're listening to this episode and you're female, if what you're hearing is, therefore, you should never have a job and get back in that kitchen. And, I think that you're missing the heart of what's being communicated, which is that as the society has shifted, men have begun to feel redundant and unnecessary. And there is something, I think, inherent in men that if they're not challenged, then they relax. Like that is I think men, just as again, we're painting with broad brushes here because every person is a unique butterfly. But I think just generally speaking, men need to feel called to a challenge, to a standard. And you don't see the problem of teenage girls spending way too much time playing video games. Like there are some girls maybe who do that, but that is not a societal at scale problem. It is for boys. When young men are not called to something greater, they will happily spend their entire day playing video games. Which actually, by the way, is just a facsimile. Like it's a different kind of challenge. You're not going to challenge me in real life. I'm going to become the best at shooting things in a video game. Like,
yeah,
does that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about.
I'm going to build a Minecraft empire.
Yeah.
Instead of building something real, like build this fake thing, fight this fake war. Like there's something deep within males. They want to make something. And if they're not called to it, they'll just get sucked into some fake half version of it
Mm, yeah.
um, online. And so I think that men have and we said this actually, I remember in our last episode on this over a year ago. To try to elevate men to something better doesn't mean we have to put women down in the process. Like that is not an equation that has to happen. That is not what you should be hearing in this episode. But it is true. It is true that in the last 50 years, societally, it's it's become kind of like in vogue to just put men down. Think about all of the societal cultural depictions of men that are most popular in culture. The Homer Simpson or the Peter Griffin or the most of the societal depictions of men have been they're buffoons, they're fat, they're lazy, they're crass, they're womanizing, they're all of these things, and men have lived down to those cultural images and
Hmm.
been like, that's what's expected of me. That's what I'll be.
Yeah.
And it's not good. And this used to not be the case. And
Yeah,
so
and I think what's hard is that obviously the outside world, I'm talking outside the church, the culture, the media is much larger than the church. And so, the audience that we're speaking to today is is more of a niche audience, and they feel this disconnect that's happening in the church, but the church isn't large enough societally to drive the culture anymore. And it was previous in our previous history, it was. And so our audience, for the most part, and you and I, Scott, personally, we feel this stuff happening in the church, and it's not being driven by the church. Now, I think some churches are a little more so than others driving it, but for the most part, they're not. And so society has changed the position and the behavior of men, and the church is feeling it, not driving it.
I think that's right. And so you're seeing, you know, sort of this emasculation and the feminization in the church, even down to things that are totally subconscious to us at this point, things like the keys we sing worship songs in. You know, you're if your church is hiring somebody to lead worship, you're probably hiring someone who is a vocal tenor. And I'm saying this as a guy who is a vocal tenor and who led worship for years. I used to think nothing. When I was singing all the time and my voice was stronger and I could hit certain notes more easily than I can now that I don't sing as much. I didn't think anything about singing a song, in the key of B that had some real high notes, and if I heard anybody complain about it, I would just think they were being sour grapes. But look around the room. You're going to see a lot of men, hands in pockets, doing their best at best, to try to sing the octave below, or more often than not, just not singing at all. They're not engaging.
Yeah.
And I'm the last person to be like, let's bring them hymns back. But the thing about hymns were they did every hymn book had your part in it. So if you could sing bass, there was a bass line, and a lot of people could read music. People can't read music anymore, so even if you brought back the hymns and the hymnals, it wouldn't help you because people can't read the music. But there's a reason why it had the bass line in it. And if you've gone to an older traditional church where they're still using this, and there's a lot of people with gray hair, you'll hear the men sing the bass line. And we just don't do that. And I know that seems like a small thing, but it is a small thing that paints a broader picture of this sort of feminization of like worship music, of the whole experience on a Sunday morning is pretty feminine, rooted in your feelings. The songs are more about how you're feeling, and
Yeah.
less focused on sort of like teaching truth, in kind of a direct and straight way. And I'm not suggesting, again, I'm like, I feel like I'm hearing the people listening to this have thoughts. I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying that everything that has happened in the last 50 years is bad. Um, I just think we should be thoughtful. And if we're seeing men disengage, I think we should ask questions about why and what
Yeah.
are we doing to contribute to that, even in our Sunday morning service.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I wish we had an easy and simple answer for a lot of this stuff, but I, for me personally, singing a song about, wonderful, beautiful Jesus. Okay. But I would also like to sing a song about defender, champion, powerful Jesus, um, with some, that's where I want to put, I want some emotion in that, um, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Read
just,
Paul's letters. Paul's like talking about like slay your earthly desires, put to death your earthly desires. He's talking about Jesus um, in the letters in Revelation. Every single one talks about to he who overcomes, being an overcomer. Like these are
we
not.
got that song. That song's out there.
Yeah, that song is out there. That's true. But there's less of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm, these are just little things. And I think this stuff, it's so subtle and it's happened over such a long period of time that this is what happens in cultures though, anyway, subtle things happen over long periods of time. And then one day people are like, this isn't where we used to be. And then the question is, how do we get back? That is I just summed up the episode right there, because we're talking about why are men leaving the church, or how come they're not as engaged? And so anyway, I don't know. I guess we've probably driven this first point home. Culture shifts
Yeah.
have contributed to this.
Yes, totally. And before we move on to the second point, just briefly, I want to just touch on some things to be thinking about to try and resolve this just very briefly. Just think about, in as much as you're talking about kindness and compassion and empathy, and those things are important, also talk about strength and resiliency and humility. These are godly characteristics that we see in David and Joshua and Paul. If you want to be an overcomer, it's about endurance through hard things, which is what Jesus talks about. It's like it's about to the one who endures. We don't talk about endurance. So just I would just encourage you to be thoughtful when you're in your creative planning meetings, and tell your worship leader, hey, I know you can sing that song in B, but take that capo down from 4 to 2 and sing it in A. Don't sing it in B. Like have these conversations. Because if you can't sing along, if you're the pastor and you're sitting in the row and you can't sing along, the guys around you can't sing along either, and they don't. Sing it lower.
Yeah. Yeah, we're out there trying to find our butt. Oh, all right. Yeah, our second point is this disconnect between church activities and male interests. And this, what's so hilarious about this is that churches are like, I guess we'll shoot. Let's go shoot or destroy something. That's
okay. Yeah.
that's like
where
all we
you
have.
live and where I live, that's true. I don't think that's happening everywhere, AJ.
Not everywhere. Not everywhere. Yeah, around here we got guns. We got gun activities for the men in the church, and that's all. So, and actually that's fun, but not like all the time. You know what? As I was just thinking about this point too, Scott, one of my earlier church memories, I didn't grow up in a family that was consistently going to church, and it just wasn't a priority in our house. But one of my earliest memories, we were connected to a church, just weren't there often. One of my earliest memories was they did a building campaign. They, expanded, I forget what were they building, must have been some classroom space or something. And the guys in the church were actually part of the construction. And so I can remember, I'm probably 6 years old, 7 years old, going and I had a hammer and I got to bang on some stuff. I don't know what we were doing, but my dad was there, and my dad was at church Christmas and Easter, but he also showed up when they were building something. And so, there's probably something to that. And I'm talking late 70s, maybe around 1980 or something. So the activities that churches have, and you can't always be building something, or maybe you could. I don't know. Churches are like, they're now they need $10 million. Like, well, I don't know, if you just got the guys together every weekend, you probably would have been done with that building by now. And it would have been
Not me.
free.
I would be like, hey guys, good job.
I got sandwiches, guys, if you're hungry. Can I refill that water for you? Scott, we're out of water over here. I wore out this hammer. Go get me a fresh one.
That's right. Oh, you said bring nails? I thought you said we were doing nails. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I've never had my nails done.
That's too far for you, Scott. Come on, don't put yourself down.
Never had a manicure. They call it a manicure, right? If you're a guy that's had a manicure, only a little bit of judgment on you.
Stop.
Just a little bit.
I'm just saying stop. So I wish we had, here's 10 things you can do to re-engage guys better. But I don't know. Although I think a lot of our churches don't talk about developing leaders enough and engaging men in that way to lead our families better, to lead the church, maybe even to start new things. That would probably be good. What's the stat you have in here, Scott?
So 61% of men report feeling bored or disconnected
in
church. And I think that this is, maybe you've hit on the problem. We keep trying to find more ways. We're trying to find the right social thing that men would want to do, that they would go to church for. Let's go shoot guns. Let's go fishing. Let's throw axes. Let's build a bonfire. And the reality is that most men would prefer, if they're going to do those things at all, to just go find their buddy or do it alone. They're like, I'm not going, I don't fish. But a lot of the guys I know that do like to go fishing, that's a thing they do by themselves.
Yeah.
Or maybe with their son. Like they're not interested in getting the guys together to go fishing because you're supposed to be quiet. Same thing with hunting. They have their hunting buddies, or they go with their grandfather, or they go with their kids, or they don't go. They don't need you to fill their social calendar or build out their hobbies. They don't need you to do that. They barely have any time for hobbies that they enjoy. Most men don't want to feel obligated to do the hobbies that you say they should enjoy. So they don't need you to do that. What they need is for you to need them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
We need you to help us build this thing. Or for those of us that can't build something, will you show up early and set up chairs? I can set up chairs like the best of them, or move tables, or, call me, or I'm more technically savvy. Hey, will you help us run this event, or run sound for this event, or live stream this event? Those are kinds of tasks that I can do.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want me to build anything for you, but that doesn't mean there aren't tasks that if my church called and said, could you help us with this? I'd go, yeah, I'll do that. But if they say, hey, we've got a golf thing, or I'm not interested. Okay. No, thank you. I'm not going. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So, and I'm in a really engaged
obviously
church
some
person.
Guys would. That's fine. We're not saying
Some
don't
guys
do
would,
those things ever. Some guys
promise
do.
You,
some guys don't.
I promise you. You talk to most of those guys, they'll go, it's the same 10 guys.
Yeah.
There's a handful of younger guys, but it's mostly the older guys. And if you stopped doing it tomorrow, it would make no difference.
Yeah. Well, society is telling men they are not needed. I mean, that's the present culture of the United States is we don't need you for anything. And so, yeah, for the church to go, no, we actually do need you.
We need you.
Because there's things we need to get done. And
here's how the church has compounded this problem. One, we focused on what social event, what hobby can we help develop for men? And they don't need that. The other thing that we've done is we've outsourced a lot of the work. So I'm a huge, this is a thing I harp on with churches all the time when I work with them. They have a number of things that they have a part-time person do, or they're giving somebody, some sort of a payment. They're on a contract or whatever. And I'm like, why are we doing this? We could be doing this with volunteers. If you called men in particular, but volunteers in general, but men in particular to more, they would do more. But you haven't created a leadership pipeline, so you don't even know what all your positions are. Not every man, again, we'll continue to harp on the fact that I'm not handy at all, but you could still put me in charge if you wanted to of the team that does that. Because I could coordinate the people who do the mowing and who do the maintenance and all of that if you asked me to, because that's a skill that I have that I could do. But no one's asking anybody to do that. They're just going to outsource it, or they're going to hire somebody. So we have a proclivity to want to hire things that we could get volunteers to do. And if you want to engage men, be like, will you come mow? They would do it. There are a lot of guys that really like to do it. Is a hobby for them.
Yeah.
Mowing their yard.
My
And if
son
they felt
would.
like, yeah. And if they felt like you needed them, they would do it.
Yeah.
And there are a
I
lot of
agree.
small churches that don't have the budget and they're like, yeah, we're already doing this. But some of these mid-size and larger churches, what are you doing? Hiring a lawn service. Buy a mower, so that someone that stays there, so somebody doesn't have to bring their stuff.
Mhm.
And then get a team. A team will do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Churches with money spend money. I mean, the churches that are bringing in more, they're not building up an amazing savings. They're just like, we got it. We're going to spend it. They gave the people gave the money because they want us to use it for stuff. And so, yeah, they end up hiring people.
Yep.
Yep. So, okay. Yeah, there definitely is a disconnect between, yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to punish. I don't want to say the churches are bad for doing this, but I think they're just
I
like,
think they're misguided. I think they're
yeah,
misunderstanding the solution.
grasping at
They
straws.
see that men are disconnected, so they go, let's do something fun they'll want to do. Men aren't looking for fun. Instead, if you want to engage men, I bet you could have, if you just started promoting every week signups for projects for men to do, you'd engage new guys like your dad. You said your dad barely ever came to church, but he signed up for that.
Yeah.
That's, you're way more likely to get men engaged than, I promise you, some new guy to your church isn't looking for some place to go to find new fishing buddies. He's not. That's not what he's looking for.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a skill and he has that skill, he might sign up for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. I used to be in a men's Bible study, and even then, great content, but the actual discussion part was so frequently trying to dig into emotions, and I was just like, what, why are we doing this? And you see around the table with like 5 guys, and maybe somebody will finally be like, yeah, I feel that way. And then other guys are kind of like, yeah, me too. Nobody wants to talk about it after that. we don't want to process our emotions and, support one another. I mean, I don't know, maybe some guys do, but I never saw that ever lead anywhere. So I think,
this is maybe a side adjacent topic, but like, yeah, I think when it comes to discipling men, I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a therapist, so all of those qualifications on the table. But I'll just speak from experience. The way out of depression for me, when I've had seasons of feeling depressed, never came from talking about it. I never got out of depression by talking it through. I got out of depression by doing something, like putting something on my calendar that I looked forward to. That got me out of depression. Doing something for somebody else, solving a problem, feeling like I was needed and helpful. Those things got me out of depression. Talking about how depressed I felt did not solve a single thing. So this is the non-expert take, but there is some value to kind of stuffing your emotions. I think like just push it down, and you'd be surprised
and just
it goes away.
Get past it. Yeah.
There is someone listening to this who is like, man, that is so unhealthy.
Sure. Yeah. Probably. We're not psychologists. I don't care. If you think this is bad advice,
just telling you what's worked.
For somebody, it probably is bad advice. I don't know. For some other guy, it's like, yeah, man, now you're speaking my language. Let's quit talking.
We used to have pastors. We didn't have therapists. We had pastors. You'd go to your pastor and you'd say, here's the problem I have. And he'd say, wow, sounds like you have a sin you need to confess and you need to repent of. Let me pray for you. And then go help someone. That's what.
Well, a lot of guys, I mean, me included, don't to be, I don't want to offload what's troubling me just onto somebody. What does that do for me? that almost would add to it. I'm like, now I've got them worried about it. So that's just adding somebody else to the issue. And so, yeah, I mean, good counsel, receiving good biblical
Yeah.
counsel, that's valuable. Help me think, is this whatever is this challenge for me, does God's word speak to this? And what's the answer there? So I mean, somebody that can help point you that direction, that's great. I mean, that's valuable. But I don't know, just to be talking about what's troubling me, no.
I mean, I guess, all right, so I'll be devil's advocate. We got to move on to the third point here, but devil's advocate, or maybe I should say psalmist advocate. Almost all of the Psalms are just the psalmists, whether it's David or Asaph or anybody. It's just their feelings,
Yeah, being
talking
expressed to
about
God.
expressed to God, how depressed they are. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, God's like, hey, I'm big enough for that. I'm not going to feel like I'm burdening God, offloading my troubles to him. I might to you, Scott, or to my wife or somebody else, you know, somebody else that might then be worried for me. Like, now you're adding to my pressure. I've made you worry about me.
Yeah,
And
but aren't we
that's not
supposed to
helpful.
carry one another's burdens? Like, I'm trying to push back on.
Yeah,
on
that's
the,
okay. That's I get where you're going with that. Yeah,
I think we're supposed to bear one another's burdens. I think that there's a healthy balance here. I think, and I'm just
right.
suggesting we've gone too far.
Yes, and I'm not.
If
Yeah,
you
I
are in
am
a
not saying
crisis,
what I'm
if
saying
you're like
should
on
be.
the edge of hurting yourself or hurting someone else,
There's a whole
you
spectrum
should
here.
say something.
Yes,
You should not
we
keep
are not
that.
counselors. We're not. Yeah, we have
You
no
should not
professional
keep
license for
that to yourself. You should definitely
that.
get
Yes,
some help.
yes,
I'm
I-
suggesting what
that's
we
right.
are suggesting is that for the average everyday,
Run of the
I'm
mill life's
I'm
troubles.
feeling a little sad today. I'm having a hard time getting motivated.
Yeah,
I'm just feeling a little depressed.
I'm in a season at work where I'm overwhelmed with a workload. Yeah,
Right. Talking about that rarely solves that problem. There
yeah,
are other things that you could do.
yeah,
And I don't know that that's true for women. I'm just saying for men, I think that the solution is to get moving. And I think it just goes back to that principle we talk about with churches in general, where we say it's easier to steer a moving car than a parked one or a stalled one. So, get a little momentum and then you can make some adjustments. So,
yeah.
yeah, this is not
Agreed.
medical advice for the record.
This is
We're
two
just
guys yakking on a podcast.
yakking
Yeah.
on a podcast, and we've
There's
gotten
going to
off
be.
of our list here. So we should get it back on track.
All right, our last point here, that there's a perceived irrelevance of church, and yeah, well, the society has certainly driven that, no doubt about it. So
Here,
yeah,
here's the stat.
Yeah, give us
Yeah.
the stat.
So, Barna study found that only 36% of men, 36, so distinct minority, only 36% of men find church relevant to their personal or professional lives. Like they just don't see
Yeah,
that, they go for their kids or they go for their wife, but they don't see it making a day-to-day impact on their personal lives. Like that is an indictment on discipleship in the church.
mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah, for
Those
reasons
numbers
we've
should
already been
be,
talking about.
at worst, those numbers should be reversed, right? That only 36% of men don't find church relevant. That it's and that would still be bad. But this is really awful. This is truly awful.
Yeah,
I
yeah, and
have
I
a
think.
theory on this.
Oh, really? Okay, great. What's your
Yeah.
theory?
And
Let's
it's
talk it
not
out.
original.
Talk it
Let's
out,
talk it.
Scott.
My theory on this is that most men and find their closest relationships outside of their family rooted in their what they do for work.
Mm-hmm.
Like their closest friends are not their friends at church. They're their friends at work. And so church is almost, I don't want to say an annoyance, but it's like, okay, there's that guy at church. Like they're not hanging out. They're not hanging out. And if they had a problem, they wouldn't. Here's the I feel this, like I feel this in my soul. If I have a car problem, because I'm not good, I'm not handy at all. You live 1,000 miles away from me, but I would call you for advice on how to fix my car, even though you can't do anything about it. There are probably men in my church who know as much or more about cars than you,
Yeah.
but I would not even think to call any of those people.
Hmm.
And they could actually help me because they live here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that, so I resonate actually. I actually don't feel that the church is only relevant to my personal and professional life, obviously. Um, I don't feel that way, but I can understand why some men feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, do you think men, it just takes a longer to develop, an enjoyable and, trusting relationship with another guy? Does it take longer to do that? And we spend so much time at work that's just, you spend enough time with somebody that's just how the relationship ends up being formed.
I think that I think that's a huge part of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and we talk about work. Like, that's what we want to. I mean, if you're not talking about you don't talk about sports because you don't like sports. That's
Yeah.
maybe the one area where I am more classically manly than you, is I
Yes.
actually care about sports.
Yeah.
And you don't.
Yes.
But apart from sports, if you get together with a guy, you want to talk about work. And if they have a completely different work situation and vocation than you, I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't even know what to talk to you about. Like
Yeah.
I can't relate to you. You don't know.
Hmm.
They don't want to talk about the best way to hack airline miles. Like I could talk about that for hours. But
Yeah.
I think the guy who's a firefighter couldn't care less about that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. Because I mean, I'm just kind of thinking about situations, where we've try to do some social things at church and get to know people. Yeah, how do you find a guy that you can actually talk to? That's not easy. I mean, so yeah, if you don't have a connection with how you spend 50% of your life at work, if you don't have a connection with how you do that, then it's probably not going to just jump into a relationship very quickly.
Yeah. And our lives are all so different, like 100 years ago, everyone's a farmer. So everybody's got the same job. You know, uh, these days, everybody's does different things, and you kind of just want to talk to people who understand what your life is like.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously they
I
weren't
don't know
all
that
farmers, but
women
if you
care about.
lived
I
in a
don't think
city, yeah, you might
I
might
don't
have
think
all worked
women
at the
care
same
about that the
factory.
same.
Yeah.
I do see this in women. This gap between women who work and women who only work in the home. Like, you
Hmm.
see that gap where they don't like to hang out with each other. Like,
Mm.
women who
Well, there's not as much
who
to relate to. Yeah.
they don't relate. They're like,
Mhm.
they both. I think, now I'm just theorizing, so I'm not a woman, but I think they both kind of judge each other a little bit. Like, the women
Yeah.
who work in the workplace judge the women who don't, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a
Consciously or
whole other
subconsciously.
episode for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we won't get into that.
we'll have to get some ladies in to talk about that at some point. But
But I don't think that within those groups it's as big of a thing. Like, I don't think that women who work in a at a medical facility care versus if someone's a teacher. I think they can relate fine. Whereas men, it's like, if I'm having a conversation with a doctor, like, I don't even know how to talk to you.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, I have a mole. Could you look at this?
So bones, huh? All right.
Is this cancer?
You're like, I don't know. I'm a podiatrist. I don't know.
I'm oversimplifying, but I'm suggesting that this contributes to the problem, is that men's lives, when they're not at home, revolves around their work, and and church is just like this third wheel in their life that they can't figure out how it connects to them in any meaningful way. And I think that actually the solution to this is the same solution to the previous problem, which is you need to build a leadership pipeline, because if you can see the volunteer position that you're in like a job, not like a job in, payment or anything, but where you go, I'm in charge of this team, or I'm on this team and I have a specific role on this team, then
Mhm.
you might start to build those same kinds of relationships within the team. So, my relation to the person I report to would become important to me, or other people who are on the team alongside of me. Those guys might become important because we're doing work together. So it's not
Yeah.
vocational work, it's not our career,
Mhm.
but we have shared values or shared things we can talk about around this team that we're on.
Yeah,
And so
achieving goals together. Yeah, guys achieving together brings men together.
just getting around to shoot the breeze, like I just don't think that guys are interested in that. Throw them on a team together,
Mhm.
then yeah, they may not be able to relate to each other at their career work, but they can relate to each other on the work, the church work that you're giving
Yeah.
them. And those relationships then become meaningful. So that's why I think that they would even find you'd be better off trying to pair mentorship relationships for men, not within a small group environment, but within a volunteer team environment, because men are going to bond more over the work that we're doing
Yeah.
versus a small group where we're just talking about our feelings,
Yeah.
which they're not interested in doing.
Yeah.
Just a,
Yeah. I agree. I think getting, greater engagement in the church, feeling like you're needed, having goals and achieving those goals. I think engaging the men, even with in higher level leadership or like visioning in the church, not that every guy needs to play a role in that. I don't believe they should. But if they were being told about that stuff, even, like, hey guys, on whatever team you're on, here's a little preview about what's going to be coming up in our next thing for you to be thinking about, how you'd be able to relate with that in your family, or to lead your wife better in that way, or your kids. Um, Kind of feeling like you're a little more on the inside of leadership instead of just being a passive consumer of it. Um,
yeah,
that for me personally, I mean, I'm probably, that's just why I'm saying this, is because that would appeal to me. I mean, I like knowing, like, what's really going on here. What's the big picture? What are we trying to do? I'm really broadly speaking in the church, vision in the church and mission. So maybe engaging guys greater that way. Like, hey man, here's what's coming up, so that you can be thinking about this and how it can apply in your family. Um, if you pull back the curtain a little bit, like, here's how we're making decisions. And we just wanted you guys to be a part of this because you're out there. We want you leading on the front line of your family. Um, that would be cool. And all that is information,
yeah,
that's not even hard to do.
yeah. I mean, I would still say, put them to work, put them to work, put them in teams. And if you've not built a leadership pipeline, you need to do that. If you just have these smattering of random volunteer teams and you don't have clear lines of accountability, there's no real team cohesion or anything like that. That's a problem. So you should go to our leadership pipeline, malforsgroup.com/leadership pipeline. We can help you build that. I would also just say too, on this last point briefly, we used to do things like this is before I would have been able to participate. I was too young, but like things like Promise Keepers, or like real men's focused, even things that are related to work. So like getting if you're thinking about like outreach opportunities to engage different men, host host a thing for like medical men, male doctors, some sort of a group, like, or businessmen meeting on Tuesday mornings. Like,
Okay.
you could create some of these kinds of groups, like affinity groups,
Mm,
um, where it's a networking opportunity for them on the one hand, which men are interested in. Um, I don't know. I'm just shooting some ideas out there, but
okay.
I think because men are interested, if they could find some connection point between faith and career, I
Yeah.
think there's an untapped opportunity there that is not being fully engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be cool. All right. Well, good. We thought this was going to be a quick episode, Scott, but we end up talking about this stuff, and both of us are like, yeah,
It's
this is the
because
problem.
it's because we have a lot of feelings about about men in the church.
Did I accidentally just
don't
expose
call
myself?
them. Just don't call them feelings.
Thoughts and ideas. I don't feel anything. All right. This has been episode 255 of the Church Revitalization Podcast. So malphurstgroup.com/255 is where today's show notes are. The video from the YouTubes is over there. And we're glad you're with us. We will be back again next week with what will be our 5th anniversary of doing the podcast. And it will not be celebrated any more than you're hearing right now. But you can be excited on your own. You don't have to express those feelings towards us in any way, shape, or form, though. That's all right.
Nope.
We don't expect that from you. Hey, while you're over there at the website, click on the donate button because we need your help. Guys, hey, speaking of you want to be a part of something? Become a part of supporting healthy churches global around the world. I'm about to be in the Philippines here in one of these episodes. It looks like I'm here, but I'm not. I'm over there. But we need you helping to do that. And so we would love for you to become a mission partner with us. So we need you for that. Ladies, don't donate this week. Guys, come on. Step up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yank
hey, thanks,
out
everybody.
we yank out that wallet. And
We'll see you next time.
helps out.